So who are we visiting?
Going to see my show at Andre Czar Gallery.
Andre
Czar.
Andre Czar.
Yeah.
Is your
He sounds like he's from Transylvania.
okay.
He's
So
actually
what's your
from
relation?
Warsaw, Poland.
What's your relation like with Andre Czar?
It's not too bad. He's a very strange man. He's been in business doing art shows since the early 70s. He started his gallery in 74. I ended up with him in coming to the gallery in 94 because he had known my work, and I was at the gallery which I was showing closed. And so then he called me up one Saturday and said, I would like to show your work. So I've been there ever since. He doesn't sell very much work. He sold a few things over the years. And that's how it goes. So. So how's the response? Anyone say much?
The responses are good.
They're good? So what do you want to know about these things?
What is there to know?
Well, I guess you could ask. I mean, the thing that I'm most interested in trying to express is the fact that there are shapes in here which certainly are, biomorphic, but they're also allude to bodies and human characteristics, because a lot of the work has this kind of edge of playfulness and desire to make you look at it and wonder what's going on.
When you're talking about edges, there's an edge here that looks like it's a different material.
Well, yeah.
Kind of string.
Yeah, it's interesting because most of these come out of a very specific set of drawings that how to construct the pieces, and so a lot of it is collage material that's attached, and then after that I try to integrate them into a painting composition. Like this piece is entitled Trunk, so this is like a trunk body, like a lower torso, but then it became so problematic for me because I didn't like the literalness of it, so I really changed it by putting in this sort of beige rectangle.
Is there a title to the series? Or?
I mean, the show was entitled Be Direct Series, which is, Be Direct has always been an aspect of my thinking, which is rather than making anything sort of, this work is pretty direct on the surface. It has, there's nothing that is too mysterious about the message that's being portrayed, in a sense. This is called Black Heart, right? And so you have phallic imagery, you have last elements of the curtain, because curtains became part of a whole series of works I did in the 90s, and they were more landscape-like. And of course, then in the early 2000 area, I started making these pieces on square format. So they're slightly off square. Most of them are about 36 by 38 in that size range. But I do tend to like to put string in here, which becomes a linear element. So most of these come out of constructed drawings, and I really have to lay it out. I have to know what it looks like prior to constructing it. And once it's constructed, then I can go back in and painting it. Of course, a lot of things get resolved at that stage, because a lot of times things don't work the way you anticipate. So then I have to go back, and in this particular series, I fell very much in love with masking tape, as you can see. I sort of taped off sections, which creates some sort of depth, because you have this darker green here, you have a lighter color here. So it moves spatially. If nothing more than a narrow space, it still is moving back and forth as you look at it. Of course, the meaning here is rather abstract and difficult to really understand. But essentially, if you understand that they are taken in a certain context, which has a level of humor as well as seriousness to them. I mean, there's a whimsy to them, I hope. And that's kind of why I include things like this kind of stuffed animal ear, because one of my great interests is, how inanimate objects tend to come to life. And that's, I collect stuffed animals. And, my art has evolved over a long period of time, which really has continued to incorporate the idea of a construct, because the first interest of mine was making artworks that reflected dimensionality and also the application of surface. And so essentially, when I started thinking about painting, the first paintings I did back in the 70s of any size were all done with collaged paper. And as time has progressed, I have started to do the same process now with canvas and various materials, like this is burlap. This section here has modeling paste on it, which builds it up. And these are cut construction pieces of canvas attached in strings. So in some ways it hasn't changed a great deal. The format has changed, the scale has changed. The actual iconography has remained somewhat consistent. If I go through sketchbooks, you see things from like 40 years ago, which are very similar to these shapes. This particular painting is entitled Raphael's Tomb, and the notion, it's not that it looks and resembles Raphael's tomb in the Pantheon in Rome, but what I did get from it was this sort of shape which appears to be like a body protruding or expanding across the top of it, and I thought it just looked like a body, and I'm a real fan of Raphael's paintings. He was certainly one of the great artists of all time. So in a way it's like an homage and a playful sort of title entitled the painting. Here we are on 20th Street in Chelsea, New York, which is a area which used to house primarily taxi cab garages and prostitutes years ago. Now it's become the shishi area that replaced Soho. The first time I ever saw Chelsea, it was another happy New Yorker. The first time I saw Chelsea was back in '86 when the Dia Project moved here, and that was the first time there was any sort of art activity in this area back in the mid '90s, early '90s. And around 2000, Chelsea took off as a major art community, replacing Soho. My complaint with Chelsea is that it's not very convenient to a normal person who's coming from a subway stop to get here. It's like 3 blocks from 3 major large blocks, New York blocks, from the 8th Avenue line. Curiously enough, I guess it's part of the elitism of the culture today, where if you can't afford to come here in a cab or hoof it, then you really are not wanted here. Most galleries are very huge activities, not the one in which I show with, but many of the galleries are enormous in size and are really kind of clearinghouses for major investments in art. That's how the art world has really changed in the 35, 40 years that I've been in New York. Well, the art world has changed enormously since I first arrived in New York. I came in '74. The first place that I ever rented was a storefront on the Bowery, which is now directly across, or would have been directly across from the new museum. And that area has changed immensely. Now there's a lot of galleries and restaurants. Economically, it's changed a lot. I think the biggest change in the art world really stems from the lack of cohesive community, because one of the changes that happened was in the 70s, at least, people congregated around particular bars. There was the Spring Street, there was the Broom Street, there was the other bars down in the Tribeca area, which people used to congregate. So everyone kind of knew one another. There was hundreds of people, or maybe thousands even at that stage. But it wasn't like it is today, where artists can't afford to have studios in Manhattan any longer. That's why I have a studio in Orange, New Jersey. That's why a lot of artists live in Red Hook, Brooklyn.
Different people, huh?
And Long Island City, various places. So it's lost its coherent community. Yet there still is. New York has become a clearinghouse for many artists from all around the world. That's really the biggest difference. Where you used to have people that knew one another, and it was a local, even though it was maybe international, it was still local in origin. And now it's really international in origin, and nothing really in the way of local. It just becomes more of a real clearinghouse for very blue chip artworks. What do you want me to say?
Talk about moving to Orange.
Moving to Orange? I didn't know Orange existed until I came to live in Orange, and then I found out that it's actually kind of an interesting area. It's racially very mixed. We're in a valley here. There is an incentive to try to find ways to accommodate the art people. This place here has about 4 rap studios where guys make rap music, and you can hear some music in the background, which is a party which happens practically every Friday, Saturday night for year-round. You guys coming in? brought me to this place was the need to have a place to work. I'd had a very large studio in Trenton, about another, it was 3,500 square feet, which is larger than this, and it was fully painted white and beautiful. And I paid very little money for it, so when this came up, it was a great opportunity to have a place to work. I needed to do that. I was going back to do my MFA at Vermont College of Fine Arts, and in 2005, I had just gotten employed in the winter or the fall of 2004 at Malloy College full time. So that allowed me to financially be able to like work and be here. But the space here is 2,400 square feet. Again, it's like an old space that was built by Tom Edison's construction company, which he basically came up with an idea of doing concrete poured construction. And that was one of the ways he earned money for his corporation. So this building has been landmarked by the city of Orange. It cannot be torn down. It has to, if it's going to be renovated, it has to be renovated as it is. This area here, this place once housed 2 studios. Because I decided to just stay here and live here, this place, this is sort of my living and storage and trash and garbage area. And of course, the record collection is kind of a funny story because I had sold a house to a friend of mine in Brooklyn, and part of the stipulation was that he was going to take my record collection. So John Schultz decided to get married at that time, have a child, and renovate his house. And so he called me up once and said, I want to bring back some of your records. Well, what he meant is he was going to bring back all 6 boxes of them. So I've got records here from the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s. Well, of course, this is the shower. I didn't install this. These fixtures were put in by the previous tenant, but I certainly used them. Of course, the toilet is a classic toilet. Looks like something you would find out in the middle of the Nevada desert or something in a truck stop. Yeah, the kitchen area is really non-existent. I don't eat here. I do prepare some foods. I store things here. This is my kitchen sink. This is kind of my debris area. This is kind of my working desk. And my sleeping loft is up here, which is up a few set of stairs. And that's basically where I sleep. And if you look here, you will see my tomcat, Joe, who is a wonderful, very lazy tomcat who just lies around in bed most of the time. Oh, look at this. That's Angela. As you can see, I have a lot of books, and that really comes from many different sources, one of which I've always loved books, but I also worked for St. Martin's Press, a publishing company in New York City, for 25 years, and that gave me access to a lot of books at a very reduced rate of purchase. Most of my books deal with art. Some books just specific areas of interest, things like golf. I love golf. I love biographies, anything to do with art or history or philosophy. You can see I have a lot of stuffed animals. Many of these were kind of inherited. A lot of them I used at Malloy when we did creativity classes, because these are really not just stuffed animals. A lot of these are puppets. And so we use these animals to get people to like sort of express themselves, to come forward and talk about themselves through the vehicle of a stuffed animal. What I love about stuffed animals is, first of all, they're funny and fuzzy and cute, but they also, at one point in the person's life, they are a very loved object. And then when people grow older, children grow older, they tend to neglect their stuffed animals and throw them aside, as most people would. So there's a certain kind of, I don't know, there's something about stuffed animals that I've always related to, and it seems a little perverse to have so many, but I do find them entertaining. A lot of them are not mine. A lot of them I've taken from other people who give them up too. This, of course, is my Jillian Michaels, who is like from the World's Biggest Loser. She is my favorite girlfriend, fantasy girlfriend. I have this 30-day workout tape. I watch it. I don't really work out with it because that would be kind of pointless. But I do like watching her jump around. What I do, though, is about 3 times a week I do certain exercises with some free weights that I've purchased. I used to go to a gym, but I didn't like the gym atmosphere. So essentially, this is kind of a warm-up weight. I think it's about, I don't even know how much it is. I think it's about 125 pounds or so. But that's usually what I start off with. And then I add more weight to it. And it's really trying to build up to about 185 pounds for my workout weight. So essentially I do 4 sets of 10, but then I do this one with just the warm-up. These paintings are essentially things that have been shown previously. This work's been done in the last 4 years. Some of this work predates that. Some of these paintings, like this one here, dates back to 1998. This piece is entitled Lean, which refers to the sort of leaning object, but also like 2 figures sort of leaning together. The implication is that it's some sort of erotic moment while standing. And then a lot of these are pieces from the late 90s. They have a different look. They're more landscape. A lot of people thought this work looked a lot like de Chirico's work, who was a surrealist. And of course things just continue to change in my work over the years. A lot of times I would, the idea of attached surfaces and also creating some sort of space. This looks a lot like kind of a still life, but with a little element here of a fantasy wall in a fantasy sort of landscape, which alludes to some other time in painting or another era in painting. So a lot of my work really kind of reflects, at that particular stage in my work, it reflected a connection of various things at the same time. And then like this painting here was one of the pieces that was in my show from 2010. It's it certainly pertains to the stuff that's in the exhibition currently. I don't know. I think it's a very solid sort of painting. But a lot of these paintings I just have here because essentially I don't have any other place to put them. Now this painting was really created primarily from having had the experience of going with students to Pompeii. And so you've got this, here you have Vesuvius and the sort of stone walls and stone work of Pompeii. But what intrigued me about Pompeii was the grid work of the streets. So I painted that as a grid work here. So in a way, this is kind of a bit of a painting that narrates something about that experience. This space here is my workspace. I mean, obviously it's like where I have the work tables. These are portable tables. I move them around. Oftentimes this is the viewing wall for the paintings. Where Damien is standing, right behind him is the working wall, where I put the unstretched or the stretched canvas onto that surface and just start working on it. What I've been working on in the last year or so have been these small constructed works. As you can see, they are based on the same forms that are in the big paintings, but they are made out of wood and paper mache and paint. So they really, to me, they stand out in a different way. They tend to be, I find them to be a little more poetic because they are so small in scale and you can sort of take them all in at one moment. And I've always been very fond of small scale work. Here, miraculously, I discovered the Shroud of Turin #2. I was sitting in my studio one day and I had not put this piece of canvas on over a window, but the previous tenants had, and it had gotten these stains in the middle, and it just struck me as a possible holy relic. So I decided to identify it as such and keep it in its proper place, the place of its origin. Well, this is the work table that I use. This is my palette. Essentially, I just put the paint down on there, or I often use these sort of a throwaway things because I can keep it cleaner than I do here. Cleanliness is not one of my strengths, as you can see, but nonetheless, it is my method of working. Essentially, I start off with some sort of shapes that are just pretty random, and they link together. I mean, I'm not really interested in coming up with something totally novel each time. I find the way I'm going to find my voice is like actually sort of going through the idea of repetition and making it so many times that eventually what happens is I get bored with it and the thing evolves by itself without me intervening in a sense. So it has a certain kind of automaticness to it. One of the things I love about doing these, this is with a China crayon. And so if I make it light on this paper, then I basically kind of fill it in with the color crayons themselves. Color crayons are wasted on children because they truly have great properties in their own right. I mean, you can do anything with them. You can keep drawing with a color crayon and making form. You can change colors with color crayons by adding another color on top of it. And some of the interesting things about color crayons that I've discovered is that they have colors in here that only exist in color crayon world. The names of them are totally outrageous. Goldenrod, and they have it in 3 languages as well, so if you happen to be... And this one here, my God, this is gel fixed crayon. I don't even know what the hell that means. So I can sort of play with this and find forms, and when I draw with the crayon over these black lines that are not very dark, you see that once I hit them with the crayon, because it's wax and the other is oil base, they kind of like really start to jump out at you. Become very different looking colors, and you can get a lot of different halftones and stuff. So you can see, like, if you look at these drawings here, I mean, I've used pencil, I've used turpentine, I've used crayons, and this is a way of me to sort of discover form, which eventually will probably translate itself into a painting form. But I think that this is a legitimate form in itself. You know, it's like this or gouache or watercolor. I don't really like to create things that look like commodities. I don't like to make paintings or drawings that look like something just for sale. I mean, I really want to, the process has to be continuous. It has to be always evolving within the forms that I create. And if I look through my sketchbooks over 30, 40 years, my work hasn't changed a great deal over time. It just continues to change in scale and material, but a lot of the forms tend to always be repeating themselves. You can see the evolution of like a simple idea. For instance, I start here, and this looks like a body. I mean, you've got legs, you've got kneecaps, you've got a torso, you know, in some sort of lumpy form of it. Then I think, well, I'll make that a more aggressive line. So this becomes much more charged. I don't tend to like model the color that much. I really get more into the black crayon and really a much more dynamic line. Then I realized that I would like to make it a little lighter. So it becomes a lighter form. And, you know, and then it just continues on. I'm sort of still looking for forms that have been in my work for a great long while, you know, like a curtain shape. And then basically I go back to just doing pen and ink drawings without color. We discover, and then I add the pen and ink, and then I start to touch it with the color crayon a little bit. So you can see it's sort of a playful way of inventing, reinventing, and continuing on the same process. I always did artwork. I always did drawings as a kid, and it was the way I related to the world. You know, it was kind of difficult for me to learn to read, or at least be interested in wanting to read. And so drawing and painting was the way I saw the world. And it wasn't really, I mean, I didn't really learn to read very much until the 8th grade. And of course, now I love to read. I'm still a slow reader, but I love to read. And once I realized I could understand what I was reading, it became much more engaging to me. And I needed to find something interesting to read about. But why I got into art was I wanted to be in athletics. I wanted to play football, and I did that. I played a lot of sports in high school, and then around my senior year, I won a Gold Key Award from Scholastic Magazine in art, and that sort of encouraged me to maybe study art in college, which I did. And then it's sort of one thing led to another, and I ended up going to really great schools, meeting great teachers, and it brought me to consider art as a career in terms of producing art. And I grew up in California, and I had always believed that if I was going to stay in California, I probably wouldn't continue to make artwork. It didn't have the cultural sort of pull. California's very laid back, very relaxed, and there wasn't any market or places to show the work, particularly for a young artist at that time. So consequently, I came to New York for 4 months and ended up staying 40 years. That's not an unusual story, I guess, in itself, but I don't have any regrets. I really do love the East Coast. It has different weather seasons. It has a lot more cultural activity to me, but I still go back to California and it's a warm spot in my heart for California. So much for your artist at Twilight. Jeez.
Hold on. What I want is for you to be looking through these paintings, okay? Let me just get some shots.